Hello everyone, Earl Henderson, Primordial Defense. Thank you for watching. I have another Monday quarterback video for you. This time it comes from Phoenix, Arizona. Back in June 2021, Phoenix Police had an officer-involved shooting. What I'm going to do is I'm going to play the entirety of this video, and then I'll hit rewind and I'll go back and I'll stop and talk about a few things within the video to kind of explain what's going on, and also talk about things that I think were done right or wrong. This particular video comes straight from the Phoenix Police YouTube page. Without further ado, here we go.
Hello, I'm Sergeant Andy Williams with the Phoenix Police Department Public Affairs Bureau. The information, audio, video, and pictures you're about to see are intended to provide details, as we currently understand them, of an officer-involved shooting that occurred on June 3rd, 2021. This video may contain strong language as well as graphic images which could be disturbing to some people. Viewer discretion is advised. This incident occurred in the area of 15th Avenue and Camelback Road when a Phoenix police officer observed an adult male, later identified as 39-year-old William Brookins, pointing a gun at a man and a woman. The officer was fully uniformed, working off-duty, conducting traffic control at the intersection that day. He had just finished his shift and was seated inside his vehicle preparing to leave. The officer overheard a loud commotion and observed Brookins pointing a handgun at a man and a woman. The officer approached on foot, drew his duty weapon, and told Brookins to drop the gun. A woman with Brookins who witnessed the incident also reported hearing the officer identify himself and tell Brookins to drop the gun. The woman also said she shouted that the police were there. Brookins did not respond to the commands, and the officer fired, striking Brookins. When an officer activates their body-worn camera, it captures 30 seconds of video before the activation and begins capturing video and audio after the activation. This is why there is no audio on this portion of the body-worn camera video. Immediately after the shooting, the officer advised dispatch of the incident, activated his body-worn camera, and requested an ambulance. The officer also notified dispatch he believed Brookins had just committed an armed robbery nearby and was in the process of committing a second one. The police code for armed robbery is 211.
No additional suspects. He's down. I guess he's 211 just shortly before I was here, and I caught him in the middle of an additional 211.
The view of the camera is not at eye level and will not capture the same perspective the officer sees. Per policy, Phoenix police officers wear their body-worn camera at chest level. Here is a slowed down and stabilized version of the incident. When backup officers arrived, they approached Brookins and moved the gun away from him. Officers searched and evaluated Brookins in an effort to begin medical aid. Due to the nature of his injuries, the medical assistance the officers could provide was limited. Officers stayed with Brookins and attempted to keep him on his side in the recovery position until Phoenix fire personnel arrived and transported him to a local hospital. After the shooting, investigators learned that the man and the woman that Brookins was pointing a gun at had just been involved in a shoplifting at a nearby store. Brookins was the passenger in this silver SUV. He told the driver to follow the man and woman to the nearby parking lot, where he got out of the SUV and confronted them with a gun. The shoplifting that was reported is under investigation. The handgun used by Brookins was recovered on scene. Brookins remained hospitalized for 5 days after the shooting until June 8th, when he succumbed to his injuries and was pronounced deceased. The officer involved in this shooting is assigned to the Maryville Precinct Patrol Division and has been with the department for 4 years. This incident is the subject of both an internal and a criminal investigation, which will be reviewed by the Maricopa County Attorney's Office. Conclusions about whether the actions of the officer are consistent with department policy and the law will not be made until all the facts are known and the investigation is complete.
This video was intended to inform and educate
All
the
right,
public about
go
a
ahead
critical
and drop
incident
that volume
in
a
our
little bit
community.
and
You can
then
learn
go
about the Phoenix
back
Police
into
Department.
the video.
Loud commotion and observed Brookins pointing a handgun at a man and a woman. The officer approached on foot, drew his duty weapon, and told Brookins to drop the gun. A woman with Brookins who
And, all right, so this is where it starts getting into it. All right, this incident sucks. um, this is a case where a good guy was trying to do something right, or what he thought was right, and stop some shoplifters. And police get there. Police really have no idea what's going on, and it appears to that officer that this dude is committing an armed robbery, and he uses force against this guy, when in fact it's this guy who's acting as a good Samaritan trying to stop some shoplifters. This sucks. Um, I hate that this has happened. I hate it for the guy who was wanting to do good and stop some damn thieves. And I hate it for this officer who now has to live with this, and this potentially being something that may eat at him for the rest of his life, something that may just bug him. It sucks. It really does. And this really brings up the topic of getting involved in things that don't involve you. So I don't recommend for just regular, people, or even hell, even for off-duty officers and off-duty security or whatever. Um, I don't even recommend doing this stuff when you're in plain clothes. But for just the regular armed citizen who doesn't have any law enforcement experience or any security experience whatsoever, I just really do not recommend at all that you get yourself involved in trying to stop shoplifters or apprehend shoplifters. It's not going to always play out the way that you think it will. And this is one of those situations where, I'm certain this guy never, would have thought that, him doing a good deed, stopping some shoplifters, would end in him getting killed. I would say that thought probably never crossed his mind whatsoever. And it's horrible that this has happened. So, yeah, if you don't have any training or experience in apprehending people, I do not recommend in any way getting involved in a very minor crime of shoplifting. Yes, stealing is wrong. Thieves are assholes and they need to be punished. But you don't need to be putting yourself at great risk in just stopping a mere shoplifter. It's not the crime of the century. Like I said, stealing's wrong. Those thieves need to be punished, but is the juice worth the squeeze? And I personally don't think it is. If you're wanting to be a good Samaritan, the best thing that you could do is safely be a good witness. You can follow at a very safe distance, not close enough to get involved in any type of altercations or anything like that. Get a good, last known direction of travel, a good clothing description. If you want to snap a picture with your phone at a safe distance in a non-confrontational manner, then absolutely be a good witness for that store owner, for the police who will be investigating this shoplifting. But I don't recommend just physically interjecting yourself into a shoplifting incident, or really much of anything else, unless it's something very serious like a rape occurring or a little kid being kidnapped or something like that. Everything else, I say the hell with it. Just be a good witness. Don't get yourself involved. And this is one of those incidents that can show what could happen when you interject yourself into something that it doesn't pertain to you. And when you are a regular citizen, or if you're an off-duty law enforcement or you're off-duty security and you're in plain clothes, your plain clothes attire, you fit in with everyone else. There is nothing that sets you apart from everyone else in that setting. You do not have a uniform on. You don't have a badge on. You don't have an ID or anything like that denoting that you're something more than just a regular person. Now, of course, if you are off-duty law enforcement or whatnot, you may or may not carry a badge on you. There's a lot of cops who don't carry their badges on them. And, if you're the type of cop who's going to be off duty and wants to get involved in things, then I would highly recommend you, A, carry your badge on you, and B, you definitely carry your gun on you. But yeah, don't be getting involved in things that just they don't matter to you, because it can turn south real quick. Because when you look like everyone else, and that uniformed person gets there, they're not going to know you from anyone else. They're just going to assume that you're just Joe Schmo. And in this particular incident, this officer just assumed, based off all the circumstances presented to him, that this guy who was indeed a good Samaritan, he incorrectly thought that this guy was an armed robber and shot and killed him. Moving on, so let me back that up about 5 more seconds. Hit the play. All right, so I've noted this before in some other videos, but check out the gun. There's another red dot sight. This is something I'm starting to notice as a little bit of a growing trend, is red dots on duty weapons. Of course, red dots are, I don't know if you call them all the rave right now, but they're very, very popular, and they are gaining popularity, especially in the private sector, competition shooting, armed citizen area. But you're starting to see a lot more of these out in the law enforcement community and even the security community as well. And there's some cons, and I'm sorry, pros with red dots, and cons depending on what you're looking at. And I'll end up doing a video on iron sights versus red dots. So stay tuned. Keep an eye out for one of those videos coming out. But just pay attention to the red dots. Pretty soon, I think red dots are going to be the thing. I think, and then probably, within my lifetime, going to a gun store, every freaking gun's going to have a red dot on it. So we can't hear, obviously, anything that's being said. We don't know how many times he announced police dropped the gun. All we know that he has identified himself as a peace officer and has told this guy to drop the gun. A witness has heard him say it, and one of the witnesses even shouted that the police, or I don't know about shouted, but has said aloud that the police are here. And the Good Samaritan, he does not respond in any way to the officer who's announced himself and said drop the gun. Why is that? Well, one, the dude could have hearing problems, or B, this may be the first time that he's ever pointed a gun at someone, and he's all jacked up on adrenaline and everything, and he's experiencing some degree of auditory exclusion. Maybe he just did not hear this police officer shouting, "Police, drop the gun." He could be so focused on these people, and he's experiencing tunnel vision and whatnot. He may be, like I said, experiencing some degree of auditory exclusion. But the officer, he makes that notification, gives that command. The dude does not respond to it, and he starts firing. I don't know exactly how many rounds this officer has fired, but he's fired multiple. I think somewhere around 6 rounds. I've hit replay on this a few times, and it looks to be somewhere around 6 rounds. And with him having a red dot sight and being at this close distance, I believe there's a pretty good chance that all his rounds went into the target. But I don't know that for sure. There's no post-mortem report that has come out with this news release, so we don't know how many times this guy was shot. Him shooting him in the back is another topic to talk about. I personally have no problem with a person being shot in the back. I do know that there's some people out there who are opposed to the idea of shooting a person in the back. They regard it as something that's almost taboo, like it's very wrong to shoot a person in the back. I personally don't get it. I don't see what the big deal is. And of course, we now know that this dude was a good Samaritan. But in the moment, this officer, he is, in his mind, he is believing this to be a situation where he's dealing with an armed robber. And he's made himself known. He says, drop the gun. The dude doesn't do it. We know that action beats reaction. This Good Samaritan, let's change the scenario. Let's say this guy was in fact an armed robber. That guy could have very quickly just spun just a little bit and started shooting at that officer before that officer could get a round off. And like I said, action beats reaction. You can do the hand slap game where you stand in front of another person, both of you have your hands out, and you are the person who initiates action. You have your hands palms facing up, where your palms are touching the other person's palms, and you have to quickly move your hands out from under that person's hands and come over top and slap them on top of the hand before they can pull their hands away. You will find that the majority of the time, if not all the time, you can quickly pull your hands out from under that other person's hands, come over the top and slap them on the hand before they can yank their hands back to prevent you from doing that. Action beats reaction the majority of the time. Even when you do the Tooler drill. So the Tooler drill, or what some people call the 21-foot rule, you have an aggressor who is 21 feet away with an edged weapon, and you are there with your gun holstered, and that person with that knife can cover that distance of 21 feet and get on top of you and start slashing and stabbing before you can unholster your gun and put effective incapacitating rounds in target. And you can set this drill up with simunitions. You can put two people there. One person's got the simunition gun, another dude's got the knife, and that person with that knife, most of the time, can get on top of that person with the sim gun before they can get it out of the holster and put good incapacitating rounds into the target. And this is from the standpoint of this person, they know it's coming. They know this person's about to come towards them. And that person with that knife can generally close that distance so quick before they can get that gun out. It's mind-boggling. And when you are the person who gets to initiate action first, well, then the other people are having to react to you. And so when you take into effect the OODA loop, you have to observe, orient, decide, and act based off your environment and what's going on. The person who gets to make the first move generally has that advantage. And so in this particular scenario where he's approaching what he thinks is an armed robber who has not obeyed his lawful command of drop the gun after he's announced himself as the police. Yeah, I have no problem with him deciding to be the one to initiate that action and win this fight versus he wait and then the dude quickly spin just a little bit and start shooting at him and maybe get a lucky hit into the face. The the action that I see here, I have no problem with whatsoever. I have no problem with people being shot in the back, but we now later find out that he did in fact shoot a good guy, and that sucks. And I hate that. I hate that so much. I hate it for the guy who was wanting to do something good in life, and I hate it for this officer who's now having to live with that. Now, this is also a good talking point on kind of jumping back into why you don't want to be getting yourself involved in things that don't pertain to you. So obviously, law enforcement, it's their job to go get involved in shit that doesn't, actually pertain to them. Other people's problems is sort of part of their job. It is their problem, so to speak. But as far as armed citizens and things like that, I think this is a really great learning example of why you should not be interjecting yourself into things that do not pertain to you. So let's say that this officer wasn't an officer; they were just another regular citizen, and they saw this dude pointing a gun at them, and he started to come up and get involved in this. The legality of that could certainly change. So we know that courts have generally given a lot of leeway for police because the nature of the business is making split-second decisions. Things are very dynamic. They happen extremely quick, and you have to make decisions right there and then in the moment, and you do not have the luxury of taking 10 minutes to weigh the pros and cons of something or come up with ideas and better strategies and plans. You have to make a decision, boom, right then and there. And if you don't make that fucking decision quick enough, boom, you're fucking dead. So that's the nature of law enforcement. And it can even be, depending on what kind of security people do, it can be the nature of the security business as well. And even for some instances of, regular people as armed citizens, deadly force encounters can be split-second decision type of scenarios. But in this context of being out in public and you observing things going on with people who have nothing to do with you, you have no dog in this fight whatsoever. This, I think, is a good example of why you should just always be a good witness for the most part. And I don't know about Arizona's laws, but I do know Kentucky laws in regards to use of force, particularly use of deadly physical force. And in Kentucky law, you have a justification to using deadly physical force against a person under the circumstances as they appear to be. And you could, for example, be out and about and a person pull what appears to be a gun on you, and you, believing that you are about to be shot and killed by this person, pull your gun out and you kill them. But then it later comes out that that person had a fake BB gun and they were actually not even capable of killing you with it at all. You still have that justification to using deadly physical force because you were in actual fear for your life, and your beliefs in that moment as they appeared to be led you to believe that you were about to die. Now, when it comes to use of deadly physical force and the protection of others, the wording changes. within the Kentucky law. It's no longer as the circumstances they appear to be, it's as the circumstances as they exist. And so, the scenario that's given in the concealed carry course here in Kentucky is, if you're walking down the street and you come across two people and one person's holding a gun on another person and you believe that that person's about to kill the other person and you pull your gun out and you shoot that person with a gun and then later find out that that's a plainclothes peace officer trying to apprehend a fugitive, you would not have a justification to using deadly physical force because those were not the circumstances they appeared to be. It was as the circumstances as they exist. And what was existing right then and there was a peace officer trying to effect an arrest on a fugitive, and you used deadly physical force against them. So if it's not your fight, you really need to think about whether or not you want to get involved in it. Now, of course, when it comes to law enforcement and, security and stuff, that's the nature of the job. You're supposed to be getting involved in other things. That comes with the territory. And so this is one of those situations where I don't know 100%, where this case could go criminally or civilly. I don't 100% think that this would involve anything criminal for the officer, but hell, you know what? As 2021, the atmosphere involving law enforcement in this year has been atrocious, and I mean, who knows? There could be a bunch of cop haters in that town who end up being in the grand jury or whatever and decide they want to indict, whatever. But I don't really fully think that anything criminal would be coming towards this officer. From the civil aspect, who knows? I really don't know. We've seen some cases across the country where the plaintiffs were awarded money when a good majority of people out there really don't think they should have been awarded any money. So who knows from the legal aspect on this what's going to happen. But the point I was wanting to make is as just a regular armed citizen, don't be getting yourself involved in other things that don't pertain to you because you're just opening yourself up to a lot of a headache or a lot of potential for headache. I have a video on citizens arrest. I highly recommend going and checking that out, where I kind of talk about, the really more or less the cons of trying to effect citizens arrest. It's one of those kind of, I don't know if you say archaic laws, but it's something within the laws that in most states is allowable. But, you really got to use some really good common sense and think real hard before you want to get involved in trying to do some kind of citizen's arrest or getting involved in something where you're trying to detain people with a gun. It's not something I recommend that anybody go do. Anyway, moving on from that point. So he shoots, and notice the timestamp up here in the top right corner. So it's 1650. So he put rounds on target at the 1650 mark. And we don't see, let me go
Immediately
through
after
the
the
little bar
shooting,
right
the officer
here.
advised dispatch of the incident,
Going up,
activated
going up,
his body
going
worn
up.
camera, and
All right.
requested an ambulance.
Oops.
The officer
Don't
also
need that.
notified
Go away.
Brookins and moved the gun away from him.
So about 2 minutes, more people come up before it looks like he makes an approach. So that's a couple minutes of this guy laying here bleeding before they get up to him. And then we don't see anything first aid related until the 1658 mark. So this guy had bullets put in him at 1650, and it wasn't until 8 minutes later that anyone pulls out any type of first aid. Now, I don't know this for sure. There's nothing in the report to indicate whether or not any of these people had medical gear on them, and you don't see enough of them from the angles to know if they have any medical gear on them or not. But based off the size of this pouch and the timestamps involved, I believe this is one of those medical kits that was in the car. And it does not appear to me as though any of them have any medical gear on them. I have always been a proponent of the idea that if you're going to be carrying a gun as a profession or as a lifestyle choice, then you should also carry medical gear on you. If you're going to carry a trauma inducing tool on you, you need to carry trauma reducing tools on you. If you carry a gun for protection, then you recognize the fact that you can be involved in a gunfight. And gunfights, bullets go both ways. You, your coworker, or your loved ones could be hit by bullets. And so you need to carry the tools to deal with those gunshot wounds, because EMS and fire, they don't typically pull right up to the scene after someone has called 911. They stage a few blocks away until the police say it's safe for them to come up there and start rendering aid to you. So there can be a long wait time before some person who is trained in pre-hospital care can put hands on you, and you could bleed out real quick. This appears to me to be a medical kit that was probably in someone's car, and that's kind of a normal thing within the law enforcement and security sector. Um, if officers are lucky enough to have an agency to furnish them with IFAKs, or, improved first aid kits or gunshot wound kits, whatever name or acronym you want to call them, if they're lucky enough for their agency to provide those things to them, most likely what's happening in a lot of places is they're buying a kit about this size, and it's something that ends up staying in the car. There are some places, and I applaud them for doing this, there are some places that furnish tourniquets to their officers, and they give them those Kydex holsters for them that keep on their belt or their vest. That's great. I want to see more of that. And there's I would say a few agencies out there who may furnish the ankle holsters, the medical ankle holsters. But even if they don't, I think that officers, both police and security, should take it upon themselves to seek out these tools and pay for it on their own dime. I mean, there's going to be a whole lot of other stuff in your profession that you're paying on your own anyway. A good pair of gloves that you like, good socks, other little things like that. You're spending your own money on it to make your job better, more comfortable. If you're going to be doing that, why not just go ahead and buy yourself a medical ankle holster, either fully stocked or just buy one with nothing in it and put the things in there that you want in there, and go about it. And then you're going to have that on you all the time when you're at work. No matter where you're at, you've got some type of medical gear on you to deal with medical emergencies, or traumatic gunshot emergencies. That's really something that I wish. That's probably the I would say that's probably the number one thing I would like to see as a huge paradigm shift, is to see everyone start carrying medical gear. And the second thing I'd really like to see, and I've talked about and harped about before in these videos, is going to calls and people only getting out with pistols. They need to be getting out with rifles. But anyway, starting to rant. Medical gear, very important. Do not rely on just having a kit in the car. Have that stuff on you. You can have a basic trauma kit, individual trauma kit on you, and it doesn't take up much space at all. Not at all. But moving on, this guy, he
Nature of his
took
injuries.
somewhere probably, I'm guesstimating maybe, 5 to 6 or 7 rounds. I think he probably took them all into his back area. And obviously, things like a
Medical
tourniquet are
assistance.
not going to help when you have 5 rounds in your back. So, this tourniquet right here is not going to be doing any good. This greenish mustard kind of colored pouch, I'm not 100% sure, but I believe that's most likely going to be a pressure dressing. So that in itself could be maybe used depending on the spread of the rounds and whatnot that's in his back. We can't see that from this angle or what's included in this video, but maybe that could be used to cover some holes. This white, let's see, hit play
The
so
officers
maybe
could
more of
provide.
it comes into view. This white pouch right here, that might be some type of wound packing or something like that, maybe some type of hemostatic gauze or something. Not 100% sure. Not 100% sure what it is, but they could
Five
have.
was limited.
You know, you don't have much in this kit right here, especially to deal with
Officers stayed with
5 holes in
Brookins and
someone's
attempted.
back, or even potentially you can have holes to the front as well. Who knows if there was any through and throughs in there. Um, Having the gear is one thing, but also having the knowledge and using it is another thing. So you can go out and buy all this stuff and it'd be really great. But if you don't really have any idea on how to use any of it, then I'm not going to say it's a total failure because you can still have that stuff and someone else may know how to use it and you can hand it off to them. But it's always going to be better for you if you know how to use it. And um, this video cuts kind of short, so we don't really get to see them provide a whole lot of medical care. And so, you
To
can't
keep
really
you
make
on
any
his side
guesses
in
or
a
anything
recovery
on whether or
position
not,
until
they
Phoenix
know what
fire
they're
personnel
doing or
arrived.
anything. The timestamp here, 1700, that's when we see EMS or fire, one of the two. I see bunker gear, so it's got to be fire department guys getting here, and they're going to be rendering some type of aid. But his injuries, I don't know to what extent they are. Obviously, he's died from them, but this could have been one of those cases where this guy could have been shot uh, right in the operating room of the best trauma hospital in the world, and he was still going to die. That could have been, one of those cases. Have no idea, but 16 at the 1650 mark, he had rounds put in him, and at the 1700 mark, hospital or pre-hospital care has arrived and is starting to administer aid. That's pretty good within that platinum 10. Platinum 10 being a time reference 10 minutes that can really make a difference in someone surviving traumatic injuries. Obviously, if they're there within see here, 10 minutes or so. I don't know how far away their hospital is or anything, but he definitely got care within that golden hour. But unfortunately, he still ended up passing. And like I said, these injuries that he received, I don't know what they are, but they could have been the kind of injuries that it wouldn't have mattered anyway if he was in the middle of an operating room in the best trauma center in the world.
And transported him to a local hospital. After the shooting, investigators.
Not much else to say about this video. Hit up all the highlights that I wanted to hit. And again, this is one of those cases that really sucks. I hate seeing when good people die. When good people in this world die, the world is diminished. Societies are diminished when good people die too soon and too early. And I hate when things like this happen. But this really illustrates why you shouldn't be getting involved in things that really don't pertain to you, and thinking more about your safety and other people in your life. I don't know who is connected to this guy. I don't know if he's leaving behind kids, he's leaving behind a wife, family, whatever. But there's obviously someone in his life that is now going to have to go through life without him, and that sucks. And it really sucks for the officer too, because now he's going to have to live with that that nagging thing that has occurred in his life that could potentially eat away at him, and it could cause some serious I don't want to say mental problems, but it could cause a lot of emotional grief for this guy, and could lead to for drinking or something like that. It really sucks. I hate that this has happened. But I've hit the highlights on what I was wanting to talk about. If you like what you hear and see, go ahead and give me a like and a share. If you have not already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Stay tuned for future Monday quarterback videos. This is Earl Henderson with Primordial Defense. Thank you for watching.